The upward price pressure on silver is so dramatic that nobody needs to tell you the silver's broken out. There are people now who will argue that a breakout in the silver price above 31 or 32 to 35 is something special. Judging from past silver bull markets, that's a rounding error. I mean, truly a rounding error. So I'm not convinced that the silver bullion is in a breakout phase, or that leadership in the precious metals bull markets is going to shift from gold to silver.
In today's episode, Rick Rule, a well-known resource investor, emphasizes the importance of gold and silver as essential tools to preserve wealth, especially during times of economic uncertainty. He believes the rising interest in these metals is driven by growing concerns about inflation and the weakening purchasing power of major currencies like the US dollar. Rule highlights that even though central banks have been increasing their gold reserves, retail investors have yet to fully engage with the gold market. However, he expects this to change as inflation becomes more evident in everyday expenses. According to Rule, gold does not need to replace the US dollar or other currencies to see significant growth. The market share of gold and silver in investment portfolios is currently less than 0.5%, far below its long-term average of 2%. Simply returning to this historical norm would cause a fourfold increase in demand for precious metals. Rule stresses that gold's value tends to rise as the US dollar loses purchasing power, making it a reliable store of value rather than just an investment to profit from. Looking ahead, Rule predicts a potential rise in the price of gold without the need for a financial crisis or the collapse of the US dollar. He points to past trends, noting that gold has historically kept pace with inflation. As inflation intensifies and more investors look for ways to protect their savings, he anticipates that the price of gold could increase significantly. Although he avoids putting a precise figure on it, he believes the long-term trend points toward a much higher valuation for gold, possibly 6 or 7 times its current price. Now we'll show you the best clips of the latest interview, but first, smash the subscribe button, turn on notifications, and share this video with a stacker. Enjoy the episode. Enjoy the
Silver bullion breakout yet. I think silver is merely caught a bid. If you look at gold, gold is approaching its real as opposed to nominal all-time highs at $2,700. Silver's nominal high was $50, but the inflation-adjusted number is more like 80. So silver, I think, has a while to rip. In my own experience, as we talked about earlier, precious metals bull markets are inevitably led by gold because the first buyer is a fear buyer. When when the precious metals narrative gets established by gold, and the momentum comes into gold, the next step is the generalist investor coming down into the precious metals space. And the generalist investor, whose motivations are both fear and greed, tends to favor silver because of its volatility and perhaps because of its lower unit price over gold. And then leadership changes to silver. And in my experience, when that happens, you don't have to look for some subtle signs. The upward price pressure on silver is so dramatic that nobody needs to tell you the silver's broken out. There are people now who will argue that a breakout in the silver price above 31 or 32 to 35 is something special. Judging from past silver bull markets, that's a rounding error. I mean, truly a rounding error. So I'm not convinced that the silver bullion is in a breakout phase, or that leadership in the precious metals bull markets is going to shift from gold to silver. I remember in our earlier interview describing the high-quality junior stocks as a coiled spring. That wasn't so much about the fact that I thought the silver price was going to break out. It was about the fact that the silver equities were hated. They were hated, I think, because a whole generation of speculators was spawned in 2010, 2011 with the Reddit silver squeeze. They had expected immediate gratification. And when they didn't get it, let's just say that there's no hate as sincere as the hate of a jilted lover. And the junior silver stocks probably ran into 150,000 jilted lovers. Really, truly profound hate. And it seemed to me at that point in time that with or without the silver moving, that there was nobody left to sell. Everybody who wanted to sell, November, December, January, had sold. And that turned out to be, miraculously, even in terms of timing, exactly right. The higher quality junior silver stocks, I think we're going to talk about a couple of them today, are uniformly up 200% this year without the silver price moving that much. They're up on what I would describe as a dead cat bounce. They're also up on results, which is very, very, very healthy. It is arguable that those stocks don't need to go up anymore at these silver prices. But if past is prologue, and we have a silver bull market coming up, which is to say that the primary metal itself does what it has done, I think people will be surprised at the performance, the ultimate performance of silver equities. Notice that I preceded all of that with the word if. Speculators are looking for certainty, which I think is too much to ask for in any speculative market. You assign probabilities to outcome and you risk those probabilities. And that's maybe what we'll talk about today.
In today's news recap, silver soars as gold hits yet another record high. Precious metal prices stormed higher yesterday as investors flocked to safe places to store their money amid uncertainty over the U.S. election and tensions in the Middle East. Gold hit a record high of $2,740 an ounce, and silver topped $34 an ounce for the first time since 2012. Gold has risen more than 30% this year, while silver is up 43%. The rise in precious metal prices has been driven by expectations of further interest rate cuts by central banks around the world, as well as worries about the U.S. election result and conflict in the Middle East. The U.S. Federal Reserve and the Bank of England are widely expected to cut rates again early next month, while the European Central Bank did so last week. The People's Bank of China has also got in on the act, cutting rates yesterday in a bid to revive the world's second largest economy. Lower interest rates tend to boost the gold price because it becomes relatively more attractive to investors. Bullion is also seen as a safe asset in uncertain times. With 2 weeks to go until polling day, the U.S. election looks to be on a knife edge, while investors are also nervous about developments in the Middle East. The outlook for gold is quite bullish, said Joni Teves, a strategist at UBS, who is tipping it to hit $3,000 next year. He added, there are a lot of risks around the next few weeks with the U.S. election coming up. We could be in for some choppy price action. Now we'll show you the best clips of the latest interview, but first, smash the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you do not miss out our daily recaps. Enjoy the episode.
The upward price pressure on silver is so dramatic that nobody needs to tell you the silver's broken out. There are people now who will argue that a breakout in the silver price above 31 or 32 to 35 is something special. Judging from past silver bull markets, that's a rounding error. I mean, truly a rounding error. So I'm not convinced that the silver bullion is in a breakout phase or that leadership in the precious metals bull markets is going to shift from gold to silver. I remember in our earlier interview describing the high-quality junior stocks as a coiled spring. That wasn't so much about the fact that I thought the silver price was going to break out. It was about the fact that the silver equities were hated.
Rick, how are you? Good to see you.
I'm doing very well, thank you. The better for visiting with you and your audience through you as a medium. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And the last video we did that was shot did very well. What I think what we'll do here, let's talk about what's happening right now Well, I take that back. It has been happening for a while, but it's gaining some momentum, is this silver breakout. When you and I first started talking, it was about a year ago, you mentioned to me that gold's got to move first, then silver will catch up. And then when silver goes, it really goes. And the words you used, the silver stocks in the past went goofy. So give the heat for 30,000 foot view on this start of this move, if you would.
Well, I'm not convinced that we're in a silver saying I'm long Abra silver. So people need to know when they hear my remarks that I'm long. I'm not merely up, I'm way up. Note too that I have known the geologist there, VP Exploration, for 30 years. He used to work for Ross Beatty. I have a high degree of confidence in him. And I like John Miniotis. I like the fact that when I ask him to describe for me 3 things that can go wrong, he has 3 things that can go wrong right on the top of his head. He doesn't BS anybody, including himself. And that's important because if you have identified at least 3 risks and you have contingency plans in place to deal with the risks, then you're a good CEO. You're not a used car salesman. I also like the fact that he understands capital markets. A lot of CEOs with an exploration project like this would raise money when they needed it. They play just-in-time chicken with capital markets. Miniotis raises the money when market conditions are good, as opposed to waiting until he needs the money. He has been criticized by some people for tapping equity markets too much. The fact that his stock is up 250% will tell you something about the fact that his strategic timing for raising capital, which allows them to run 8 or 10 rigs, is much more intelligent than this just-in-time BS that some people do to manipulate markets. So he's a high-quality guy. I also need to say, well, 2 things. The project Diablios is one that I helped Silver Standard buy many years ago, and I'm embarrassed to say that the exploration potential was completely lost on us. So I'm delighted that this team has taken a project and has done it justice. What is important to me with Abra Silver right now is it would seem that they understand the nature of the deposit or deposits so well that drilling has become predictive. In other words, they say, this is what we think is happening. We're going to test this idea with 8 or 10 drill holes, and the 8 or 10 drill holes confirm the idea. In my experience, often but not always, when the deposits are well enough understood that the drilling becomes predictive, you're at sort of a fulcrum point in terms of net present value additions. And I think we may be there with Abra. I think they understand the deposit. I think the nature of mineralization is profound. But importantly, it looks to me like the drilling is becoming predictive. When drilling becomes predictive, the amount of ounces that you add I'm not saying they will, but can go up dramatically. Note finally that the Abra deposit is in a fairly remote part of Salta province, so that the front-end capital costs are going to be pretty high, but they're coming down as a consequence of other precious metal developments, and particularly lithium developments on the Salto Plateau. So when you look at the fact that this is by nature vicuña pasture, high, dry, and remote, understand that there are other active mining operations within 40 kilometers, which is to say 25 miles of this deposit. Unlike when we had it in Silver Standard, and you had to get there by horseback or by helicopter, 2 unpleasant options. You can drive there now, which makes a big, big, big difference.
What do you think of Rick Rule's take on gold and silver? Do you agree with his view that silver has the potential for a major breakout? Rick has pointed out that while gold is steadily climbing, silver's volatility presents a unique opportunity for those who can handle the ups and downs. He also emphasized that central bank demand for gold, particularly from nations like China and Russia, is a strong driver of future price growth. But when silver breaks out, Rule believes it could lead to an amazing financial circumstance for speculators. Let us know your predictions in the comments. Thanks for watching, and be sure to check out this next video. It's a perfect fit for you. See you there.